was a time when Prince Harry was one of the most admired men in the world. He was the rebellious royal, the soldier who served on the front lines, the young prince who carried a sense of charm and relatability that other royals struggled to match. Wherever he went, the cameras followed, and the headlines often painted him as the fun, approachable member of the monarchy. But that was years ago. Fast forward to today, and the story couldn't be more different. Instead of royal duty and global respect, Harry is now making headlines for something far less flattering: financial struggles and a reputation that seems to be slipping through his fingers. The irony is almost painful. Harry and Meghan's big announcement when they left the royal family was all about freedom and independence. They wanted to live life on their own terms, make their own money, and escape the restrictions of royal life. At first, it looked like they were succeeding. Huge multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify rolled in, along with book deals and speaking engagements. For a while, it seemed like they were proving everyone wrong. They were going to build their own empire without the help or the control of the crown. But things changed quickly in Hollywood. Behind the glossy photoshoots, the glamorous Montecito mansion, and the red carpet appearances, the cracks started to show. Their projects weren't performing the way they'd hoped. Spotify dropped them after just one podcast. Netflix reportedly cooled off on future projects, and whispers of money problems started to circulate. For a couple that once claimed they didn't need the royal family, the idea that they might now be struggling financially was both shocking and embarrassing. And that's the stage where Harry finds himself today, a prince who once represented freedom and rebellion, now facing rumors of bankruptcy, a crumbling brand, and desperate moves that nobody could have imagined back when he walked away from Buckingham Palace. Just when people thought Harry's situation couldn't get more embarrassing, a rumor hit the headlines that stunned even his closest circle. According to insiders, Prince Harry actually went to one of his former friends, none other than football legend David Beckham, with a request so outrageous it had Hollywood gasping. A $50 million loan. Yes, you heard that right. Not $5 million, not 10. Harry allegedly asked for a jaw-dropping $50 million. To put that into perspective, $50 million isn't the kind of money you borrow to cover a few bad investments or smooth out a rough patch. That's bailout money, the kind of request that says, my entire lifestyle is collapsing, and I need someone else to save me. For Harry, a man who once bragged about cutting ties with the monarchy to become financially independent, this move didn't just raise eyebrows, set off alarm bells. The amount alone was shocking, but what made it worse was the sheer desperation behind it. Instead of scaling back expenses, refinancing assets, or finding smaller investors, Harry seemed to go straight for the biggest, boldest option, asking one of the wealthiest and most connected celebrities on the planet to swoop in and rescue him. And it wasn't just anyone. This was David Beckham, a man whose name is practically a global brand. Someone who once stood side by side with Harry and Meghan at royal events, smiling for cameras as a trusted ally. But Hollywood isn't known for kindness when it comes to weakness. The whispers started immediately. Why would Harry ask Beckham of all people? Was his situation really that bad? And most importantly, if Beckham said no, unheeded, what message would that send to everyone else in Hollywood? When the news broke that Beckham had refused Harry's request, it wasn't framed as a polite maybe later. Insiders say the answer was blunt, flat, and final. No. For Harry, that single word carried more weight than just the loss of money. It was a public blow to his image and a crack in one of his oldest friendships. Because Beckham isn't just any celebrity. He's not some distant acquaintance Harry barely knew. This is a man who was once considered a bridge between the royals and Hollywood. Someone who gave the Sussexes a touch of global star power when they needed it most. Seeing Beckham shut the door so firmly sent a very clear message. Even Harry's high-profile friends weren't willing to back him anymore. And in a place like Los Angeles, that rejection travels faster than wildfire. The story didn't just stay private between two men. It spread through boardrooms, celebrity circles, and gossip outlets in a matter of days. Suddenly, Harry wasn't seen as a man trying to reinvent himself, he was seen as a liability. If Beckham, the golden boy of branding and influence, wouldn't put his name or his money behind Harry, why would anyone else? But the sting went beyond business. This was personal. Beckham's no symbolized more than financial caution. It was a turning point in their relationship, which had already been strained for years. And for Harry, the optics were brutal. The world didn't just see a failed loan request, they saw a prince being turned down by one of his last powerful allies. In the end, Beckham's refusal wasn't just about $50 million, it was about what it represented: the collapse of trust, the loss of credibility, and the public confirmation that Harry's star power was fading fast. The truth is, Beckham's rejection was just the latest chapter in a story that had been unraveling for a long time. For years, Harry and Meghan sold the world on the image of a power couple to people who could leave the palace behind and still dominate global headlines on their own terms. They promised independence, freedom, and the ability to build a brand stronger than anything the monarchy could offer. And for a while, it looked like they were pulling it off. The Netflix deal, the Spotify deal, book advances, endless magazine covers, it seemed like money was pouring in. But behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as stable as they looked. By 2023, Spotify had axed their $20 million podcast deal after just one season, with executives whispering that the couple didn't deliver the content they promised. Netflix, once eager for a long-term partnership, was reportedly cooling off on new projects, worried that the Sussexes' appeal wasn't as strong as it once seemed. Even Meghan's attempts to launch new ventures, from lifestyle brands to PR initiatives, failed to spark the excitement she had banked on. And then there's the lifestyle. The $14 million Montecito mansion, the private jet trips, the army of PR people and lawyers, all of it cost money. A lot of money. And instead of scaling down when revenues slipped, reports suggested they kept spending as though the millions would never stop flowing. To outsiders, it looked less like financial independence and more like financial recklessness. So when whispers of bankruptcy began to circle, nobody was really shocked. The image of Harry and Meghan as self-made celebrities was colliding with the harsh reality of dwindling deals, extravagant spending, and a brand that wasn't pulling in the returns it once did. By the time Harry reportedly went to Beckham for that $50 million lifeline, it wasn't seen as a sudden crisis. It was seen as the inevitable breaking point of an empire built on shaky ground. On the surface, Beckham's rejection might look like a cold financial decision, but the truth is, this moment had been building for years. The friendship between the Sussexes and the Beckhams was once warm and supportive. David and Victoria were seen at royal events, cheering them on and offering the kind of Hollywood credibility Harry and Meghan craved. But behind the smiles, cracks had already formed, cracks that would eventually turn into a chasm. According to insiders, the turning point came when Meghan allegedly accused Victoria Beckham of leaking private stories to the press. The claim wasn't small, it cut right to the heart of trust. For the Beckhams, who guard their reputation fiercely, the accusation was an insult. Victoria was reportedly furious, David was said to be offended, and what had once been a close connection quickly turned frosty. From that point on, the warmth between the couples cooled to a cautious distance. So when Harry showed up figuratively, or literally asking for a $50 million bailout, the Beckhams weren't looking at it as just a financial request. They were looking at years of tension, mistrust, and unspoken resentment. The rejection wasn't just about the money, it was about sending a clear signal. The friendship that once existed was gone. For Harry, that made the humiliation sting even more. This wasn't some random investor turning him down, it was someone he once considered an ally, someone who had stood beside him in better times. Beckham's refusal wasn't just a no to a loan, it was a final nail in the coffin of their friendship, a symbolic end to one of Harry's last strong connections to the glamorous world he and Meghan wanted to dominate. And in Hollywood, when friendships break down, the fallout is never quiet. The story didn't just remain a private rejection, it spread as proof that the Sussexes were losing not just their deals, but their allies too. If Harry thought Beckham's refusal would remain a quiet, behind-the-scenes embarrassment, he couldn't have been more wrong. In Hollywood, nothing stays secret for long, and this particular story spread like wildfire. Within days, whispers of the $50 million loan request and Beckham's blunt rejection were everywhere. Boardrooms were buzzing, tabloids were feasting, and social media exploded with one brutal nickname after another. Suddenly, Harry wasn't being spoken about as a philanthropist or a rebel prince. He was being mocked as Harry, the borrower, the begging prince, and even the most expensive liability in Hollywood. Memes flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, poking fun at the irony of a man who once declared he was free from the monarchy's money, now supposedly begging a footballer to save him. One viral post captured the mood perfectly. Imagine leaving the royal family for independence, only to end up asking Beckham for $50 million. The post racked up thousands of shares in hours. TikTok creators stitched clips of Harry's past speeches about financial independence with sarcastic captions like, "Freedom costs more than you thought." Even Meghan's projects weren't spared fans. On Netflix, forums joked that if her shows were actually interesting, maybe they wouldn't need bailouts in the first place. The ridicule was relentless. And worst of all, it was funny. Because in the court of public opinion, laughter is far more dangerous than anger. People might forget scandals that spark outrage, but when you become the punchline of a global joke, the damage lingers. Harry and Meghan's carefully crafted image of being powerful, independent outsiders wasn't just questioned, it was shredded. What people saw instead was desperation, rejection, and a couple rapidly losing the one thing they needed most: respect. While Harry was being mocked as the begging prince, the fallout hit Meghan just as hard, maybe even harder. For years, Meghan has worked to shape her Hollywood identity as more than just a duchess. She wanted to be seen as a tastemaker, a cultural leader, someone powerful enough to influence fashion, media, and even politics. Every public appearance, every business move was carefully curated to present an image of control and success. But the Beckham loan saga cut straight through that illusion. Because what's glamorous about begging a former friend for $50 million? What's powerful about being turned down flat? In a single headline, the image Meghan had been crafting for years was undercut by the optics of desperation. Instead of looking like a power couple, she and Harry looked like celebrities who couldn't manage their own affairs. Hollywood is ruthless when it comes to reputation, especially for women who want to be seen as leaders. Meghan had sold herself as a brand builder, someone who could turn the Sussex name into an empire. But now the narrative shifted. Instead of being respected for her vision, she was being mocked as out of touch, spending lavishly while deals collapsed and friendships disintegrated. Even supporters who once defended her began to quietly ask the question: if Meghan was really in control, how could things spiral this far out of hand? The harsh reality was impossible to ignore. In Los Angeles, influence isn't measured just by who you know, but by whether people believe in your power. And the Beckham loan drama made it crystal clear people were beginning to doubt. Meghan's Hollywood dream wasn't just wobbling, it was at risk of collapsing under the weight of broken promises, failed ventures, and now, public humiliation. While Harry and Meghan's Hollywood empire was cracking under pressure, back in London, there was no need for the royals to lift a finger. They didn't have to issue statements, or retaliate in the press, or even comment at all. Harry's actions were doing the work for them. When the couple stormed out of royal life in 2020, they framed it as an escape, a way to gain financial independence and live free from what they called the constraints of the crown. It was a dramatic declaration that they didn't need the monarchy anymore. But now, just a few years later, the story looks painfully different. Rumors of bankruptcy, a desperate plea for money from Beckham, a brand mocked on social media. For the palace, it must have felt like vindication. Because from their perspective, Harry had walked away from a system that guaranteed stability, only to land in chaos. The boy who wanted freedom had discovered that freedom comes with a price tag, and it's far higher than he expected. And as whispers grew louder about financial trouble and reputational damage, the contrast between Harry and the royals became sharper. While William and Kate were steadying their public roles and Charles was quietly managing the crown, Harry and Meghan were seen scrambling, grasping, and losing ground. Insiders say this is exactly what some in the palace predicted, that life outside the firm wouldn't be as easy or glamorous as Harry imagined. And now, with every new headline about failed deals or desperate moves, the monarchy doesn't have to say a word. The message is already clear. Harry's decision to leave didn't weaken the crown. It weakened him. For the palace, there's likely a quiet satisfaction in all of this. After all, in their world, perception is power. And right now, the perception is that Harry traded security for uncertainty and ended up with neither. In Los Angeles, reputation is everything. It's not just about who you know, it's about what people whisper when you're not in the room. And after the Beckham loan saga, the whispers about Harry and Meghan turned loud, fast, and ruthless. At first, Hollywood saw the Sussexes as a goldmine. They were young royals with global name recognition, a dramatic story, and the potential to attract massive audiences. Big players like Netflix and Spotify threw money at them, expecting blockbuster results. But the problem with reputation in this town is simple. Once doubt creeps in, it spreads like wildfire. And Beckham's refusal lit that fire. Producers, investors, and financiers began asking the same uncomfortable question. If Beckham's a golden boy of branding and influence wouldn't back them, why should we? Suddenly, the Sussex name wasn't seen as an asset, it was seen as a liability. A risky bet that could just as easily backfire as succeed. Behind closed doors, the tone shifted. Where executives once saw a power couple, they now saw toxic assets, people who demanded huge paychecks but couldn't deliver the content or stability to justify them. The glitz of Montecito mansions and red carpets wasn't fooling anyone anymore. Deals slowed down, enthusiasm cooled, and the Sussex's Hollywood brand began to look less like a rising empire and more like a sinking ship. And in a town where currency isn't just measured in dollars, but in credibility, that kind of reputation can kill a career. One rejection from Beckham had spiraled into an industry-wide warning. Getting too close to Harry and Meghan might cost you more than it's worth.